What's up gamers, Cryptico here, and welcome back to Lowering the Mark, a show where I analyze the current and former world records of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe time trial runs to see how these records get faster over time. We'll look at elements such as the loadout, racing lines, and mushroom usage to better understand what's bringing these times down. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when my videos go live. For today's episode, we're closing out the Leaf Cup by taking a look at easily its worst course at regular speed because I put it off for so long, Sherbet Land at 150cc. On May 1st, 2017, the world record for this run was set at 1 minute 51.679 seconds by the Dutch player Danny. Over 5 years later, on July 24th, 2022, the record now sits at 1 minute 46.998 seconds thanks to the one and only Alberto. That's a 4.6 second improvement between records and a 4.1% faster time. Our former world record holder Danny has broken over 90 world records across 47 unique runs and has spent exactly 100 days holding at least one world record. Our current world record holder Alberto is now up to 960 world records across 78 unique runs and just became the 5th player ever to hold at least one world record for over 1600 days. Pretty easy to do when you currently hold 48 of them. At pre-release, the world record was a mid-156, and within the first few days after, Danny almost single-handedly brought it down to a low 151. About a month after this point 3, Japanese player Light stepped in and shaved off the remaining tenths for the next second break at 150. Light continued to bring it down by another 6 tenths before rivals Ruben, Velocity, and Lation stepped up and went faster. The latter of those three also grabbed another second break, which brought the time down under 150. Shortly after these 4 records from Ome Mona, fellow Japanese players AK and Lemon contributed to bringing the time down by another second for 148. Now in August of 2018, it was Britain versus Japan again as Velocity and Lation traded records all the way down to this 148.26. At the start of 2020, Alberto did what he does best and took the record away from someone else with no prior history on the track. Over 200 days later, he washed Brandon for 147 and put up 12 consecutive records and took the time all the way down to 146. In total, the record was broken 77 times by 16 different players. These loadouts are more closely matched than I would have assumed. Danny goes with the combo of Wario driving the land ship with the Azure rollers and the super glider. Alberto runs with his trusty baby buggy loadout of Baby Daisy whipping the Biddy Buggy, also with the Azure rollers and the paper glider. Right off the bat, we notice the heavy vs mini top speed stats in which Danny leads as well as the lopsided handling in which Alberto nearly doubles that of his competitor. Looking at the rest of the stats, we see the usual 1 to 2 point edge in acceleration and mini turbo for our current world record holder. Another thing to point out here is Alberto's higher grip stat. This will allow him to better navigate the icy hell that is Sherbet Land. I haven't been exactly quiet on how much I dislike driving on the snowy landscape of this track. The course layout isn't bad at all, but slipping and sliding literally everywhere on the course has never been fun, and I don't know why Nintendo keeps making these. On the flip side, it is interesting to see how world record holders deal with this obstacle since regular racing lines won't work as well. Let's take a closer look. Danny hits the rocket start out of the gate and quickly chains these 2 mini turbos before the ice, after which he'll grab this tight super mini turbo and ride out the boost on a straight line up to the end of S1. Alberto also gets the rocket start and chains those 2 mini turbos. Right as he enters the ice, he chains another quick mini turbo before grabbing that same super mini turbo around the turn. After that, he'll tack on 2 additional mini turbos through the rest of the section before drifting into the cave for S2. The first half of that looked pretty similar for both players, but the reason Alberto is ahead here is because of the cumulative time save from every single longer lasting mini turbo. His lead sits at just over a tenth of a second going into S2. Danny drifts into the cave on a tight line, then goes wide to grab the 3 coins and a super mini turbo. After that, he'll chain 3 normal mini turbos through and out of the cave before drifting into the thicker snow and using his mushroom to cut that next turn out. He'll close out this long section with a long super mini turbo around the final turn before the ice. Alberto enters the cave on a tight line and gets the super mini turbo before going wide for 3 coins and another SMT. He'll chain that with 1 more SMT, then sneaks in 2 quick mini turbos at the end of the cave. Now out of it, he'll grab a quick pair of super mini turbos before using his mushroom to cut out a different turn just before the end of S2 and also grabs the ultra mini turbo before taking the ice. Here we saw both an abundance of longer lasting mini turbos on a better line as well as a more optimized mushroom cut from Alberto. Obviously the shortcut itself was the main time save, and his lead surely benefited from that as he's now ahead by Danny by over 1.2 seconds going into S3. Danny sticks to the right side of the ice for as long as possible while chaining 3 normal mini turbos followed by 1 longer super mini turbo through S3. After that, he simply rides out the boost on a strict line to close out the lap. Alberto instead drifts off this ice cap underwater and carries it all the way off this ramp for the super mini turbo. After weaving around the pillar, he grabs 2 quick mini turbos and pairs the second one with a jump boost. He'll close out lap 1 with a quick mini turbo and sets himself up for another one right into lap 2. Here we saw 2 very different approaches to S3. Danny stayed on the ice while Alberto went under it. At first glance, the former seemed to be on a better line than the latter, but with the same amount of mini turbos plus that jump boost, Alberto actually took the faster route here as his lead grew by almost half a second because of it. He's up on Danny by over 1.7 seconds after 1 lap. Danny enters lap 2 drifting and chains those 2 quick mini turbos through the winding road before grabbing that same super mini turbo around the next turn on ice. After that, he'll ride out the boost to the cave at the end of the section. After this immediate mini turbo, Alberto chains 3 more through the winding road before the ice. Once there, he'll similarly get that super mini turbo around the turn and then chain 2 more normal ones as he makes his way to the cave. No major differences here except for that additional mini turbo Alberto got right as the lap started. His lead now sits at just over 2 seconds at the end of S1. Danny stays inside for the entirety of this first turn and grabs a super mini turbo as a result, after which he'll chain 3 normal mini turbos through and out of the cave again before using his second mushroom to cut out that next turn and get another mini turbo. He'll close out S2 with a super mini turbo around the final turn. Alberto stays inside around the first turn but gets an ultra mini turbo instead. He'll then chain a super, normal, then another super mini turbo around the next set of turns. Once out of the cave, he chains another SMT around the next turn and uses his second mushroom to make that same cut from lap 1 for the ultra mini turbo just before the end of the section. The main difference there was both racers took that first turn way inside and remained on a better line all throughout the cave. On top of that, we saw Alberto take a much more optimized shortcut and grab that longer lasting mini turbo yet again just before the end of the section. His lead jumped way up to 2.8 seconds at the end of S2 because of it. Through S3, Danny chains the 3 normal mini turbos while sticking to the right side of the ice before grabbing this longer super mini turbo around the final turn and just rides out the boost all the way to the finish line. Alberto heads straight off the ice cap back underwater and carries that drift off the next ramp for a super mini turbo. He then squeezes in the same 2 mini turbos before this jump boost and closes out the lap by chaining another mini turbo once he lands. Again, not too much deviation from their lap 1 approach for either racer. Danny stuck with staying on a tight line throughout the final section, and Alberto opted to chain more speed through the underwater portion via those longer lasting mini turbos. After 2 laps, his lead jumped up to over 3.2 seconds after outsplitting Danny's lap by just under 1.5 seconds. For his final lap, Danny chains these 2 normal mini turbos before grabbing a super mini turbo around the first slippery turn. He then rides straight into the cave where he'll charge up this long super mini turbo through the first turn on that tight line, then exit the cave by chaining 3 more mini turbos to that. Now back on the snow, he'll use his final mushroom to cut out the following turn and grab a mini turbo in the process. Just before S3, he gets a super mini turbo around that next turn. Now back on the ice, Danny chains 3 quick mini turbos on the right side of the course before charging up 1 last super mini turbo around the last turn and riding the boost out straight up to the finish line. Alberto grabs that immediate mini turbo followed by 3 more chained through the upcoming winding road. After grabbing a super mini turbo around the first ice turn, he chains 2 quick mini turbos before the cave. Once in it, he'll tightly grab this ultra mini turbo around the first turn, then get a super, normal, then another super mini turbo as he exits. He then grabs this super mini turbo around the next turn before using his final mushroom to make the same cut he's made on the past 2 laps. 1 ultra mini turbo later, he's back underwater and drifting all the way off the ramp for the super mini turbo and closes out the race with 2 more mini turbos, a jump boost, then 1 final mini turbo before crossing the finish line and posting a time that was over 4.6 seconds faster than Danny's former world record. So by grabbing more longer lasting mini turbos, better optimizing the mushroom cut, and better lines all throughout, Alberto was able to stamp his name in the history books with this barely achieved 146.9. For consecutive record number 12, that's not a bad time at all. I was finally able to reconnect with Alberto, so let's hear a few words from the champ about his world record. What was going through your mind when you finally went 146?
I thought I would sub by more, but I was still so relieved to see 146 because the pace I was on was insane and I didn't want to choke.
What would you say is the hardest or most inconsistent part of this run, and is the run itself easier at 150 or 200cc?
The shroom spot is almost luck based and can gain or lose a tenth of a second depending on what type of wall hit you get. I wouldn't say one is easier than the other. Both are very difficult in their own ways.
Will we ever see 0.7, or are you done with this course after getting the 0.9?
I don't plan on continuing to lower this mark any further because I've already reached my goal.
Thanks for hopping on one last time for a quick dive into your record. It's been great to work with you and watch you get all these records, and I hope you find even more success in the future. The best known splits for this run show that as fast as this run has gotten over the years, it's nowhere near its theoretical limit. Unsurprisingly, Alberto owns all 3 of these splits, and he'd only really need to improve on 2 of them if he wanted to bring the time down further. A total of 0.2 of a second is up for grabs on those second and third laps, while his opening lap, if 1 frame faster, would be the new best known split. As we just heard him say, Alberto is done with SL150 as he's reached his goal, which is basically a green light for everyone else to take a stab at breaking it and possibly bringing it down by a few more tenths. Who shall it be? The worldwide top 10 consists of 7 national and 4 continental record holders. Alberto sits at the top with the only 146 in the world, only 0.6 of a second behind him is Mana in second, and just a hair behind him is French record holder Army in third. Canadian record holder Braden is down there in 4th, and 5th and 6th place consist of Funa and Kuroto separated by 0.5 of a second. 7th through 9th place on this board consist of Ra, Thomas, and Panda separated by just 7/100ths of a second. And rounding out the top 10 is Zeline repping the fastest of the 148s. I present yet another example of one or more players being so good at a particular course that they've separated themselves from the rest of the world by a wide margin. Straight up, there is no competition for Alberto on either Sherbet Land world record, at least not right now. You see the top level players that far down the board that could give him trouble on any other course, but when it comes to SL150, Alberto is and will remain the man for quite some time, despite not actively trying to improve his world record. That's going to wrap up episode 92. Hope you found it interesting. Don't blink, because in a few weeks, lowering the mark will officially come to an end. I hope you'll continue to stick around because you aren't going to want to miss the finale. If you enjoyed this video, like and share it with your friends, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.